Hello YouTube, it's Random giving an update on my CZ PCR. I had posted a video on it a couple of weeks ago as that was the first range session where I concentrated on that gun even though I've had that gun for several years. During that session, I noticed that I had problems shooting the gun consistently due to the poor sights on the gun. And looking through YouTube and looking on some online reviews, I decided that Truglo TFX sights were well reviewed and would be worth getting. I'd watched a 4-year-old YouTube video by Such00 where he mounted the sights using a bench block, a gunsmithing hammer, and a punch, all of which I had. It looked easy enough, so I decided to order Truglo TFX sights from Amazon, making sure that what I ordered was for the CZ75 and that based on reviews that it fit CZ PCRs. When the package arrived, it did say that the sights were for CZ75, but it excluded the PCR, Remy, Omega, and Tactical Sport Checkmate models, as it says so in the packaging. What the heck? In the packaging advertised on Amazon, this is blacked out. It only said 75 series. So I had to do a frantic search online where I came across a video just uploaded 6 days before by Mr. Bullet Points, who had come across the same problem. In his case, he had his gunsmith install the sights and it fit the gun perfectly. I decided to go ahead and mount the sights on the gun. First of all, the gun is empty. And in retrospect, I should have bought a sight pusher beforehand, but instead went at it with the hammer and punch. Most difficult part was removing the original rear sight. I had of course removed the set screw, and I drove out the old sight, left to right, much as in the same fashion as Mr. Such00 had in his video. I had difficulty in getting out the old sights, and in fact, partway through, I'd called my local gun shop to see if the smith was in, but he was still out due to the pandemic. And after I had mounted these sights, I actually took a look at my older CZs and tried to see how the sights were mounted, and I found that quite a bit of them actually had marks on this side indicating that the original sights were put in this way, in which case they should have been driven out this way, right to left, opposite of what I was doing. However, researching it after the fact, opinions varied as it wasn't a tapered dovetail that CZ puts in here, so supposedly it doesn't matter if you drive it in this way or the other way around. Now, a large vise with hardwood grips, rather hardwood on the jaws, so as not to mar the slide, would have been ideal to hold the slide, but I didn't have that. Eventually, I was able to take off the old side, but in doing so, added scratches and dings to my slide. I bought the gun used, so it already had several mars to the finish, so getting new dings was irritating, but I did not feel too horrible about it. After I had removed the old sight, putting the new one in was difficult, and the sights were put in from this way, and it took quite a bit of persuasion, but I was able to get it in there, and once there I put the set screw down, but held off on putting blue Loctite. Now, during my recent range session with the PCR, I noticed that the gun was shooting slightly left at 25 yards, even though my rear sights, original rear sights, were well centered. So when I mounted this new rear sights, I mounted them just a tad to the right to compensate for this. So I don't know if you'll be able to see, but the gap over here is just slightly more than the gap over the left side, so that means that the rear side is sitting off slightly to the right side to compensate for that. If that would have been the same thing with this side, I could always drive it in a little bit further to the center if I was wrong in my assumption. Now, removing the front sight by tapping out the roll pin and pushing it out, and then pushing out the original sight from the back to the front was fairly unremarkable, and replacing it was fairly unremarkable compared to my problem with the rear sight. Now, I did have the appropriate roll punch 1/16 size, so that made the job easier. Now, as you can see, let's check and see how the views are. Okay. The sight picture is fairly easily acquired, and I do like the fact that what I got was the green with the white ring around it. I'm not sure if the orange would have worked for me just as well, but well, the center is always green because of the fiber optic with the tritium vials inserted in it. Now, the big question was the point of impact changed, and do I have to move the rear sight for windage? Now, also it turns out, not unexpectedly, that Truglo actually recommends that you use a sight pusher to mount these rather than using a hammer and punch, as there is a danger that you might damage the tritium vials inside. But so far it's working after using the hammer and punch on it. But like I said, I did put dings on it. I don't know if you can see it. I'd actually applied some black touch-up paint, I guess is what you'd call it. I got it from a gun store before. That would be helpful in touching up some scratches to the finish. Now, the good news, with benching the gun, the windage with my slide adjustment compared to the old side was perfect at 10 yards. And elevation appeared to be just right. As expected, it made it easier to shoot the gun consistently given this sight picture. Now, onto the shooting. Paper is at 10 yards and headshots to the steel target is at 25 yards. And at the end, unlike with my steel shooting at 25 yards where there was a grouping of shots towards the upper left side of the round gong, this was well dispersed throughout the head target with more hits in the middle of the target. So I do think that the windage is correct here. The dispersion is due to the ammo and, of course, my shooting. I was shooting offhand, not shooting from bench. So on to the shooting.
Got some in there. Better at the end. Bring it down like this. Good tight. Bring it to black. Push it back forward.
So look into this.
Yeah.
But this one I really felt.
Okay.
Top right, it's just the wind. Yeah.
Right behind you. Right behind you.
Left, right, up or down?